Welcome back, everyone, to Borderlands 2. This is the 8th episode for Rainy Day Let's Play. It's raining again. Oh no, I'm losing a friend. Sorry, that's Supertramp. Anyways, if you remember last episode, this mission totally glitched out. Turns out, when you go back to the place, he's just right there. So, kind of a handy way to fix a glitch.
If I want to treat people shot by E-Tech, I want to need way more wounds to practice on. Now that you got Doc Mercer's E-Tech gun, why don't you test it out on the local bandits?
Ah, crap, this... There's a verb I use for this, called skyrimming. Because in Skyrim you can just kind of jump all over the place. If you get stuck somewhere, it's like, just jump out of it. And Borderlands 2 is not Skyrim friendly. We'll have to find another place to jump into there. So, where a few episodes ago, I talked about the book Borderlands. It was Borderlands, La Frontera from Gloria Anzaldua. And I've officially finished reading through it, and it's pretty friggin' awesome. If you got from the first time I brought it up.
Stuff that ain't bullets. Energy stuff. God damn, Iridium is weird.
That is some fine insight. Also, the sad thing is these psychos are so weak that if they hit me, they will burst into flames and die. Which does not help my mission of killing them with this weapon. Awkward moment is that I have to make sure they don't melee attack me, even though it won't do any damage to me.
I've been doing some research. Looks like there's all types of guns out there
awkward.
to find. Blaster rifles, plasma cannons, rail guns. Sounds dangerously awesome.
Don't hit me. Crap. Don't. Okay. Touchy. So, the last time that we brought up Borderlands the book, and reflected off this, we were talking about what Borderlands represent, and what they kind of metaphorically mean in their, when you extrapolate from the literal sense of being between two lands, and how this game can kind of identify with that. So, I'm going to try to dive more into that by going towards the end of the book, that talks about Anzaldua's, a lot of her conclusions, really. Jump into our bubblegum car. Head out to the next level, which is actually, that's right here. Yeah, we're gonna go into this compound and assassinate a whole bunch of assassins, as the mission says. So one of the first parts of the end that Anzaldua talks about is the power of words and of actually having language to express oneself, which is something that I've noticed to be a really big problem when it comes to looking at games, is sometimes you just don't have words that accurately reflect what you mean or what you're talking about, and that the language is something that's actually limiting. And so being from the Borderlands has a very different look on that, because you're coming from two different languages. You have two entire tools. It's like having a hammer and a chisel versus just having a hammer. You have so many more options of doing things when you have two languages that you're working on. So as she writes it, picking out images from my soul's eye, fishing for the right words to recreate the images. Words are blades of grass pushing past the obstacles, sprouting on the page. The spirit of the words moving in the body is as concrete as flesh and as palpable. The hunger to create is as substantial as fingers and hand. Just the same, a lot of the same metaphor that I used where it was like hammer and chisel. She's talking about fingers and hands being tools of creation. And language is also another tool of creation. Interesting for bringing this back to Borderlands, for Chicanos it may represent the power of knowing the dominant language, which in the Borderlands instance it can be English or Spanish depending on where you're at, but also having knowledge of that, the inferior language depending on, just opposite of dominant, not inferior as in quality wise, but the less dominant language But in Borderlands, there's a very specific language that's used for psychos. And the psychos actually separate themselves from what are, well, it's basically the difference between NPCs that you kill and the NPCs that you don't, but they have different languages between them, which is kind of a interesting quirk that is part of the limitations of creating video games. But you're not going to hear Scooter say the things that psychos say, or you're not going to hear Pierce say the things that psychos say, or Doc. So psychos are represented by their speech patterns being of the Borderlands, is what we called it last episode when we talked about this, was that the psychos are the indigenous people of the Borderlands, or at least as close as we can find. The language of psychos, right there. So, for a psycho, sometimes they just need to scream semen at the top of their lungs. And we'll definitely run into encounters where that happens. It's like the idea of getting into the mind of what a psycho represents, and you have these borders between civility, where you have the psycho, you have the Vault Hunter, and Vault Hunter's crew, which is the people of Sanctuary, and Handsome Jack. And it's wholly embodied in Borderlands 2, where when Handsome Jack talks to you, there's this talking down that he does, and it kind of plays on the idea that you have of class differences and how that's represented in civility. Like, you have the lower class, you have the insane class in this case of the psychos, and then you have the bourgeois upper class, the upper echelon, where Handsome Jack lies, and everything underneath him is something that he can use or trash or something. And that's basically the idea of classism, which is something that's totally bearing in US culture. And although it wasn't something that was like explicitly designed in, it's something that follows through just because of the writing style and because of where the writing staff comes from. Being in the US, you have this idea of entrenched classism, which is kind of cool. It's cool that we can explore that in a different way in this game. But how the dynamics between what are in Borderlands 2 3 different classes of people, psychos, those who are from Sanctuary, and then Handsome Jack, who is Outer Planet and is coming in to dominate the locals. And the Vault Hunter himself also comes from off-planet, but does it in a very different way. And so it's interesting to see how these dynamics play within the culture of the game. As far as what Anzaldua talks about in gaming in general, though, is very different. Or at least, sorry, how I can relate her conclusions to general state of gaming. But she writes about Borderlands: living in a state of psychic unrest in a borderland is what makes poets write and artists create. It is like a cactus needle embedded in the flesh. It worries itself deeper and deeper, and I keep aggravating it by poking at it. When it begins to fester, I have to do something to put an end to the aggravation, and to figure out why I have it. I get deep down into the place where it's rooted in my skin, and pluck away at it, playing it like a musical instrument, the fingers pressing, making the pain worse before it can get better. Then out it comes. No more discomfort, no more ambivalence, until another needle pierces the skin. That's what writing is for me, an endless cycle of making it worse, making it better, but always making meaning out of the experience, whatever it may be. For me, as a Let's Player, that's kind of a lot of the ideas that I'm trying to express, and as a critic, is basically exploring the Borderlands between games and the Borderlands in-game culture that may not be totally realized just because of how ingrained things are. I mean, the biggest one that people love to talk about is hardcore versus casual. And to ride that borderline is a very, very interesting place. This last week I was at a oh god, it was a summit for gamification in a law building at K&L Gates law firm. Biggest friggin' building I've ever been in. It was fucking beautiful. But it was such a weird place. This is a group of people who are lauding the business models of casual games, which is something that I personally loathe. And so this is where it's like I am in foreign territory. But then where are all the people that ride that border between hardcore games and casual games? And so, because those are the people who ideally could have the most power, and that's something that Anzaldua talks about, is that those who ride the Borderlands know the most about everything and have the most insight to give. So you could think of like PopCap, the company that makes Bejeweled and Plants vs. Zombies, and how much power they essentially have riding that border between hardcore and casual gamers. There's other kind of like classisms in gaming, like someone who plays EVE versus someone who plays any other MMO, where an EVE player will be very specific about how they want their game experiences to be. It actually becomes a little difficult to talk to EVE players when you don't have any knowledge about EVE. I have a person in my class who loves EVE and loves talking about it all the time and brings it up a whole bunch, but a lot of it just gets lost in translation when he's trying to talk to other people about EVE and trying to relate it to what's going on in the class. It's a weird place to be. Oh, this gun is just eating all of my ammo. I hate using this gun. Oh, and my sniper rifle is underpowered. I just need to get rid of all of it. Just reshuffle the deck. We're gonna mulligans. Man, I don't even know what that does, but it's got red text on it.
I just realized you grunts are gonna get yourselves killed without this little tidbit. All sirens are born with different crazy-ass powers. You cannot, I repeat, cannot win a fight with them in one-on-one combat. You see Lilith, contact me immediately. I can handle her. You can't. Me, yes. You know.
You can also find Borderlands in communities, like League of Legends players. Huge border divides between so many different groups and classes that, I mean, it'd be goofy to even start, but the idea that a small community can have borders and that writing those borders can be a very successful practice. And to basically, the idea is just to ask questions about when you find these borders and play off of it. I mean, one of the borders that I'm writing right now is I'm bringing a book into a video game, and it's like, why the hell would anyone want to do that? How does that make any sense to read a book during a let's play of a video game when we could just be doing other things? And the idea is that what I've found is that book reading's actually pretty helpful. Before this year in college, I had actually been very against reading books as a way of learning, because I just had never gotten anything from them. And as much as I get from playing video games, where there's a huge difference in how they work together. But now I'm finding that there's tons of ways that mediums can get along to the point to where you can draw new insights from using both of them to reflect off of each other. And hopefully that's what I'm doing here, and I'm not just blowing smoke. But that is another Borderland that one can ride and gain a lot from. I feel like Dr. Zed's campness and unmedical soundingness is indicative of the style of this game. They bring it so close to coming to some like big stunning conclusion, and then they just dumb it down at the very end for you for no real apparent reason. I don't know. Anyway, so here's one of the toughest conclusions that I've found in Anzaldua's writing is, why would you cross Borderlands? Why? I mean, I kind of have talked about parts of it, but what is the point of exploring these things when it's much safer to be on one side or the other? There's no doubt that being on the borders of Mexico and the US is not the safest place. But that's the idea of the rainy day, is sometimes you gotta get wet, you gotta get dirty in order to actually come across something truly insightful or gain some true wisdoms. Anyways, the way that she writes it is way prettier than any way I could say it. But this is a poem that she puts into the story. It is titled Una lucha de fronteras, a struggle of borders. Because I, a mestiza, continually walk out of one culture and into another, because I am in all cultures at the same time, alma entre dos mundos, tres, cuatro, me zumbo la cabeza con lo contradictorio, estoy norteada por todas las voces que me hablan simultáneamente. And that's the idea at the very beginning of this Let's Play, is talking about having the power of different languages and what that could mean. Why do we cross borders but to gain insight? We cross borders to solve problems of oppression, to understand each other better, to be more rounded as people. I mean, that's the idea of me versus reading. Now that I've actually been able to start reading books, I've actually found a lot of great sci-fi books that I've enjoyed. I have a very small book collection next to my overwhelming stack of games. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. I've got Philip K. Dick's Ubik, which was just this amazing insight into what can death mean, and it just blew my mind, and something that I love to share with a lot of people, just as much as I love sharing... Oh, what do I got on my game side? Elite Beat Agents on my game side of this shelf, as much as I love sharing that with other people too. And so the code switching involved in Anzaldua's book, which is it's full of switching between the languages of English and Spanish, is used to show that the different ways that one can express themselves. Ah, you saw me pull out of that one. Ugh, am I the only one who thinks I'm awful at this game? No, it's not that I'm awful at it. It's this gun is truly terrible. Alright, it is a gun that becomes harder to shoot the more that you shoot it. So it becomes less accurate the more you shoot it, which is very frustrating. Why would you do that with an assault rifle? Or in this case, a sniper rifle. I think my sniper does the same thing. Alright, anyways, there's a few more sections that Anzaldua makes very good points, and hopefully I can share them with you. As she writes, she's discussing about the tolerance for ambiguity. Oh, come on. Wreath, you are so dead. Wreath? There we go. The bonus mission is to melee him, but you know what? It's just too much work.
I've been observing this siren, Lilith, since the opening of the vault. She appears to be using iridium to enhance her natural phase-walking abilities. This naturally leads me to assume some unspoken connection between sirens, iridium, and the vault. I have determined two additional things. Firstly, that she finds it irritating when others pluck out strands of her hair under the guise of needing them for scientific experimentation. And secondly, that they taste like olives. Wait, no, fried pickles.
Oh, thank you, Tanis. This science sounds weird. Some of that pseudoscience. Taste and hair. Alright, so Anzaldua writes about a tolerance for ambiguity, which is a big idea in writing the Borderlands. She writes, "The new mestiza copes by developing a tolerance for contradictions, a tolerance for ambiguity. She learns to be an Indian-Mexican culture, to be Mexican from an Anglo point of view. She learns to juggle cultures. She has a plural personality. She operates in a pluralistic mode. Nothing is thrust out. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Nothing rejected, nothing abandoned. Not only does she sustain contradictions, she turns the ambivalence into something else. And that something else is the power that we're talking about. Hopefully the power of... Oof. This is not a fight that's going well for me. It's okay. We've scraped out of worse. But there's the hardest part of writing the Borderlands is having a tolerance for being in an unsafe place, and how we gain from that, how we learn from that, is very, very powerful to be able to, as she puts it, be Mexican from an Anglo point of view, and be Indian in a Mexican culture, both of which are minorities that are not looked proudly towards, and there's a lot of racism involved in that, and that's something that one has to fight against. Of course, the hard part is already being in the dominant culture, being, in my case, being white, being male, being straight, means that I have to watch what I do in my own power and my own privileges. And that can be something that is also a challenge. The idea is that even though I can't embody these minorities in a way to gain wisdom from, I can support them by, like, in this case, talking about them, having a let's play about them. And so there's still ways to gain that wisdom despite not being in the Borderlands. I feel like I'm missing something. Sorry, I feel like there's a passage I'm missing. Oh, okay. That's what I thought. So, the last part of the reading that I have before I'm gonna close the book on this one, which I don't know if it's the easiest book to find. I think that any online store will have it, and I'm not sure how easy it would be to find it in physical bookstores. Either way, great read for anyone and everyone, and I highly recommend it. It's probably the most interesting book I've read, because it's supposed to be a textbook, but it involves poetry, and it involves code switching in between languages, and it's very short. It's only like 100 pages of Anzaldua's work, but there's another like 50 after that. That is, I guess 70 or so. That's all poetry, which is really cool. Poetry in many different languages, talking about similar things and struggles between the borders and stuff like that. And it's really cool. So, the last part that I want to read is probably the big conclusion that I found at the end of the book. En unos pocas centurias, in the centuries to come, the future will belong to the mestiza. Because the future depends on the breaking down of paradigms, it depends on the straddling of two or more cultures. By creating a new mythos, that is, a change in the way we perceive reality, the way we see ourselves, and the way we behave, La Mestiza creates a new consciousness. The work of Mestiza consciousness is to break down the subject-object duality that keeps her a prisoner, and to show in the flesh and through the images in her work how duality is transcended. The answer to the problem between the white race and the colored, between males and females, lies in healing the split that originates in the very foundation of our lives, our culture, our languages, our thoughts. A massive uprooting of dualistic thinking in the individual and collective consciousness is the beginning of a long struggle, but one that could, in our best hopes, bring us to the end of rape, of violence, and of war. So, very tough challenge. While I pull myself out of another one real quick. So, this is the last assassin of the entire compound. Hopefully I can take him down without dying too much. Rude of him to have the sniper rifle shotgun. Oh, well, or I can just take a complete misstep and jump into the pool. Oh well, we'll take him down real quick. So, I really love the conclusions that Anzaldua comes from, because they come from such a subtle place, from very small origins, but she has this view, and we talked about the last episode where it's like, you need to project the view of the world that you want to see into, and you have to embody that kind of progressive idea. She goes all the way. She's like, alright, I may be just this person that you think is not worth much, but on the other hand, I'm the future, and we can all be a part of that future together. And it's just it's not easy, but it's a very powerful statement. Speaking of not easy, let's see if we can pull out one more small miracle out of this. That's it. I just beat a sniper with a shotgun. And we take all the loots from it. Cool. So, that was all the assassins. And that's all I've got for the book.
Since you shiverbrains evidently don't know how to listen, I'll say it again. Stop bringing in fake sirens. Only 6 sirens can exist in the universe at any given time, and I already know of 3. You're not going to convince me you happen to find one of the remaining 3 just by drawing blue tattoos on some random chick's corpse. No, I will admit it was wildly amusing the first dozen times you idiots tried it, but now my office smells like blood and marker fumes. So quit it!
Alright, let's pick up all our loot from the end of the compound. Apparently there's only 5 sirens in the whole universe, so we'll just have to find a universe with more sirens. I think we could probably do that. Borderlands 3. Multi-universe. Oh gosh, it's a J-Rai rope gun. Language, why you so hard? Why you so tough? See that? One button, one gate, and we are back at the very beginning of the compound. Alright, thanks so much for hanging out with me again, and we will see you next time for another rainy day.